Yeah, my birthday does expire in about 3 hours and 40 minutes. I'm booked now. I'm booked.
Okay, so we'll call this to order. We only have one matter on the agenda. Happy birthday, Councillor Mano.
Thank you.
I realize that in council, I would have said something at the time.
49 today.
I didn't, you didn't wish.
I had somebody tell
Mine
me
was
I was gonna
October
turn
1st, nobody
26.
said anything to me.
We're just going to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor? Carried. We have the minutes from the last meeting. The last two meetings, actually. Separate motions or single?
Do you want us to salute you
We have
or?
one motion to approve the minutes for the last two meetings. Can I have yeah, all in favor? Okay, so the only item on the agenda, we have a report from our fire chief and our commissioner of human resources, and I'll let Al kind of give it a bit of context and why we're here in caucus tonight. And sorry, you have a conflict to declare, Councilor
Mr.
Nails?
Mayor, I need to declare conflict. My brother is employed by Fire Services.
Duly noted, Councilor Nails, thank you.
I have a really good friend who's here.
I got a good friend.
So that's understandable. So folks, if we could, I'd really like to get through this. It's going to be pretty substantive, so as quickly as possible, so we can maintain our normal meeting decorum. I'm just going to give it to Al to give us some context, and we'll hear from the chief and the commissioner of resources.
Thank you through you, your worship, to council. Staff is enclosed tonight to inform council about a proposed organizational realignment within the emergency services to transfer up to 20 positions from fire services to EMS services. Some key highlights before I turn the floor over to Chief Figliola to comment and describe some of the details of the proposed changes and explain the implications and potential strategy are as follows. A key one is the initiative is being recommended as a service level improvement opportunity with no impact on existing service levels. It is not intended as an efficiency per se, but a transfer of resources to address a growing risk on the EMS response time side. Second, staff is presenting in closed session first to inform council. This report will be coming forward in open on October 26th. In the meantime, the chief, myself, and the HR commissioner will be meeting with the union executive to discuss what's being proposed so that they have a heads up of what's coming to council for October 26th. It is intended, on the third point, that if on October 26th, the restructuring will be completed over a prorated period to allow for a smooth transition with minimal impact on community needs and existing resources. I.e., we're very mindful of the collective bargaining units involved, we're very mindful of the service levels that exist for the municipality, and we're very mindful of all the risks associated with both the provision of fire services and the provision of EMS services. Again, final point, although not the impetus for this proposal, it is expected there will be some financial savings. The chief will outline some of the thumb sketch numbers as part of his presentation this evening, but we will be working with the Commissioner of Finance to nail those down and look at it relative to budget concerns as well. Again, we're looking at probably a 2 to 3 year transition period of nutrition and other needs, but again, the chief will get into details about that. So I'll pass it over to the chief to provide that detail. Please note that the city solicitor here is here and the commissioner of HR is here. The commissioner of finance is not in attendance tonight, but again will be an integral part of the review and the analysis going forward from this point. So with that, I provide to the chief to provide you an overview of the business transformation that's been decided.
All right, thank you. This is the third time I've appeared before you, and we built a knowledge base moving forward with the last two presentations in the 9 months that I've been here. So this one here is going to be a culmination of what I've seen, the input I've solicited, and recommend to you where I think we should be moving down the road. And as the CEO has said, this is a realignment, it's a reallocation of the existing resources. It's not a tear down, it's not a slash and burn. I'm going to go through that and show you what I would like to do moving forward. So the 4 points that we have here when I'm looking at this is, first and foremost, is to manage the risk. My position is to advise you how you manage the risk on the fire and emergency side of the house. And it's by using effective and efficient use of the existing resources by adapting to current and future customer service demand, which we've seen over the last 30 years that, quite frankly, haven't been addressed. We want to provide a better service, more aligned to the needs based on a cost-benefit analysis, and this will involve a significant reallocation of resources, effort, and focus to achieve a higher performing organization. And as the CEO said, these are thumbnail numbers, but based on what I would like to implement, it'll take us 2 to 3 years based on attrition. These are what we're looking at operating savings on a yearly basis, approximately $900,000, an additional 10-year capital savings of $2.3 million. So if a total 10-year savings from now to, if we begin next year in 2026, of approximately $11 million of reallocated money. I wanted to take you through a quick little education process as I move through the rest of the stuff to basically give you an understanding of what we need to do and why we need to do it. Okay, done there.
Yeah, this was your video clip, right?
What the video clip will show you, there was at one time you were required to have one fire smoke alarm in your house. Then they went to 2 alarms because there was a particular fire that happened where, although there was an alarm on the upstairs floor, there was a confined fire in the kitchen on the basement, on the first floor, which did not alert the people properly. So that's why we had the laws changed to require an alarm on every single floor, and as of 2016, the law will be changing. They must have a detector on every floor and in every sleeping area. Basically what it's showing here is this is the exponential growth of heat and fire and any type of fire. And at the end of the day, we don't get there to fight the fire, to try and effect a rescue by the time the fire has grown exponentially to get in there. A fire detector will go off at 45 seconds. It takes us a minute and a half from the time of the alarm to leave the station. So you're looking at 2 minutes before we even get on the move. Now that also depends on how long it takes till it was detected. And if it's during the day or at night, either somebody walks by, somebody drives by, notice there's a fire, it could have been going for a minute, it could have been going for an hour, initiates the callback to get us going. So the sense of the video is to show after 2 minutes in this house, no one's going to get in and no one's going to get out. I will send you that video. So we don't know how long it takes to detect and report the fire, because that's the while. The only thing that we can control is once we get the call, by the time we get the call and we're turned out, meaning we've left the station, it's a minute and a half. On average in Sault Ste. Marie, the travel time is 3 minutes. We get to the scene. If it's a major fire, it's a minute setup. So by the time the call comes in, we start intervention, it's 5.5 minutes. That fire has almost doubled from the time it was called in. So the absence of smoke alarm, rescue is almost non-existent, as temperature and body of fire is too great upon arrival. Death has already occurred. That's the reality, and that's what we have to deal with.
Chief, does any of the changes you're suggesting, does it change any of our response times here?
No, our response times aren't affected by it, and we won't affect this by our response.
Yeah, so we'll still dispatch and turn out in a minute and a half, and our travel time will still be 3 minutes.
Yes. And at the end of the day, you can't possibly build enough fire stations in any city, small, medium, or large, to get there in 2 minutes. It would cost you millions and millions of dollars. So how we manage the risk is the most important. These smoke alarms and escape plans. That's how we prevent death from fire, not by adding more firefighters, because they can't get there to save people. Smoke alarms, again, single floor, each floor, every bedroom. You need to have an escape plan, you need to note it, and you need to practice, especially if you have young children. Residential sprinklers is another thing. As we move forward, as development picks up in the city, we may want to put in a residential sprinkler bylaw, which is another thing which will stop the fire at the scene, allow people to get out. The relative inexpensive, it adds about $1 per square foot. So if you've got a 1,500 square foot home, it costs you $1,500, a pretty good one-time investment in saving lives. Again, an aggressive education and enforcement. We have a very good enforcement policy here in the city based on the commercial properties. We had a flake board factory about 2 weeks ago, and although there's lots of damage to the machinery, the building itself was intact because of the sprinkler system, and that was because of road enforcement on the fire code. We need to change behavior, and I use that as a seatbelt now. We would never get into a car today, most of us, without putting our seatbelt on. And we need to ingrain in people and hammer home, never go to sleep without an active smoke alarm in your home and in your bedroom. That's an education. So part of the whole, just we're trying to move some resources into the education road. That's going to save more lives than fire stations or fire trucks, unfortunately. And then the last, of course, you do need a response. Interesting historical fact. Fire departments came into existence, not unfortunately, not because people were dying, but because we had these massive conflagrations at the turn of the century. We had the great fires in Toronto, Calgary, Chicago, where 4 and 5 square blocks of the city were completely wiped out. That brought in full-time fire departments in the big city, not because people were dying, unfortunately. It was a money thing. Our response, so if you look at it over the 30-year period, fires are down 80%. That's a general statistic across the board. Here our response to fires is down to approximately 82%. So we're within the norm. And presently today, only 3% of our calls are active fires, roughly 1 per week. A complement of 10 properly trained and equipped firefighters required to fight a basic residential fire. And that's what Mike said. I don't want people dying in residential fires. The commercial things will take care of themselves because of the detection and the sprinkler systems. And the other myth, firefighters go around fires, they don't go through fires. So if the fire's in the back, you go in the front. If it's in the front, you go in the back. But if it's all over the place, you don't walk through it like in the movies. It doesn't work that way. That's not what happens. And the big CL, which I talked to you about back in March, is we have EMS calls at 12,000 and growing. We have fire calls at 2,500, which are declining, and 1,000 of those 2,500 are also medical assist. So basically, you've got 13,000 medical calls, and we have 1,500 fire calls. Another quick education process. So the basic standard from the Office of the Fire Marshal is you need to have 10 people on the fire ground to fight a standard residential fire. Basically, on the right-hand side, you have what are called the fire ground tactics. The ones in red are the most important. You need to get there, size up what you have. If you need to perform a rescue, which is rare, you do that. You have exposure, so if the house is in the middle is going, you need to protect the 2 on each side and fight the fire from the outside. You can find the fire, you extinguish it, then you ventilate to let the toxic gas and smoke out. You salvage what you can from the contents, and you overhaul, making sure there's no fire extension and all the fire is in fact out. And you do that on the left with staffing. You have water supply, which is your pump driver. You have your command, which is either your captain or your platoon chief. And you have 4 teams of 2. And they can be doing rescue, backup, exposure, ladder work. Sometimes they may do ventilation at first to vent some of the gases before they go in and make an attack. So there's plenty of people on the fire ground with 10, and this is what we presently run with. When we have a fire call, we run with 10 firefighters. And you can get them there on 2 trucks of 5, 2 trucks of 4, 1 truck of 2. It's as many as you get there can be on, or you get 10 there on 10 different trucks if you want. The key is to get 10 on the fire ground as you're moving forward on a fire. So my recommendations to you is we continue to have 10 respond to fire. That's not a change. But where we want to do is adjust the daily staffing level. Right now we have 17 on shift. So we have 10 going to a fire, and we have 7 waiting for the next fire that rarely comes. We need to go to a staffing level of 10 to 13, which is more flexible, which allows us to both cut back on some of the overtime and staff to those occasions when we need it. For example, we have lots of events going on in the summer down by the waterfront, so on those days, we may want to up staff to 17 for a 5 or 6 hour period in order to cover the risk and manage the need. Conversely, at 3 o'clock in the morning, we could probably get away with just having 10 on shift. So this will allow some flexibility to staff based on the needs and the demands. We have present one complement will go to 17 from 22. We presently have 5 vacancies and the remainder through attrition during the 2016 to 2018 for a total of 16 positions. That's based on the demographic that we have right now. We have a communication room which is has not had any capital input in it for years. It's quite frankly, a taxi stand has better communications ability than we do. It's not good, and in order to bring it up to speed, I'd have to ask you for $300,000 in capital expenses to bring it up. And then there's a refresh every 5 years of approximately $250,000. It's a typical IT communications, high-intensity tech, high-cost technical world. What I'm proposing is that we contracted to the Central Ambulance Center, which already got 12,000 EMS called for us, and their cost would be $175,000. And at the end of the day, we're going to realign 20 from the fire side, the fire operations side, and I propose that we put them into these positions here. We need 8 medics in order to get another truck on the road, because there are still times we have no ambulances available. That's just not acceptable moving forward. We have no supervision on the paramedic side. That's a concern under Occidental Health and Safety. In order to get that public education going, I need 2 public education officers. I need a training officer. Our training is sporadic, and to the discussion that you had with Mr. Nero a few minutes ago, there is no individual training plan. There is no massive training plan for the whole department because there's no single point of contact to do with training. And based on both the equipment and the risk in fire, we need to make sure we have that. We're doing fire, ambulance, and police vehicles with 2 mechanics, which is not enough. And the emergency planning field has expanded rapidly, especially both in our location and based on legislation, and the present 1 person is overwhelmed. So at the end of the day, based on the 8 paramedics and 4 paramedic supervisors, those are 50-cent dollars from the province. So that wrote out at a net savings of -9, which is approximately $100,000 a position, which is there's where the savings are, $900,000 annually. The next area that we need to look at is we have a very old boat that it's not a fire boat, it's a boat with a pump on it, and it does some rescue. We've only had 4 calls for it in the last 3 years. It needs to be replaced. For example, the engines are 1990, and it's a dual engine boat, and both propellers rotate the same direction, which is a safety hazard. You don't do that. It needs significant repairs at this point. Even if we don't replace it, I can't put it in the water next year. It's damaged. And again, around us here we have Coast Guard, we have 3 different police forces, we have the MNR, they have all the water resource boats where we're going to need if we need them moving forward. We have way too many large firefighting vehicles. I mean, you need them. We don't need 6 of them in this city. We need 4 and then maintain the rest of the light fleet, which are smaller rescue type squads, which gets equipment to the scene, but you don't need to have 6 large firefighting vehicles that has, on average, 1 fire a week. You know, just to allay your fear, if we have something, one of those 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 year big events, we're going to be using our mutual aid partners from around the district, across the river. That happens all the time, but we can't staff for the what ifs. We'll be prepared to deal with it. And one way we deal with it, we have 4 platoons of, and if we go to the 17 number that I want to go to, we have 4 platoons of 17 that rotate through a 28-day schedule. If we have a major event, what we do is we go to what's called task force. So platoon 1 and 2 become task force A, platoon 3 and 4 become task force B. So we now have 34 firefighters on deck, and we rotate them on 12 hours on, 12 hours off for 72-hour period to hold our ground until we get all those other resources coming through. That's what I did at the Air France accident at Pearson. We had 12 on shift, and we doubled up to have 24 to handle that major emergency. Right now, we have 3 or 4 on each truck. That will not change. Based on the dynamic, flexible staffing, a truck one day may have 4, one day may have 3. At the end of the day, we're still going to get 10 to that fire as required. Longer term outlook is, as we move forward with integrating fire and EMS, we have a deputy for EMS, we have a deputy for fire. Most departments where you have this integration have one operations deputy that oversees both functions. That'll be probably 4 to 5 years away until we deal with some of the cultural stuff and some of the cross-training issues. We need to do a more formal station location review. I just did some general plotting, and what it's shown me is that basically Station 1 downtown, although it's a downtown station, is redundant from a response point of view. If we were to take that right off the mat and not respond from there, the area could be covered in the 4 to 6 minute timeline with the other 3 stations. Question?
I'll start with the last one first. Our time, I think we said earlier, is 1.5 minutes. The last sentence you just said was that it would give us a 4 to 6 minute response.
1.5 minutes is from the time of the call to
Right.
the time for us to leave the station.
Right, so, okay, so the actual,
3
when you say
minutes.
response time, like the last sentence, you just said the 4 to 6 minutes, you're talking about arrival at the scene?
Yes,
From the time you
of the
left?
call to the time of the scene.
Okay, so if that station went out of commission, out of the system, that wouldn't change, you don't think?
No, we'll
I know
do
that's not a-
we'll do like a study long
Okay,
down the
yeah.
road, but by plotting it, it's in the hub of the 3 other ones.
Right.
In that 4 to 6 minute time frame.
Okay,
So it actually, in some of the response from Station 1, they're 2 minutes. We don't need a 2 minute response.
gotcha.
And just
Okay,
to
I
be
had-
clear, I don't think that's being proposed right now.
No, I
No,
got that,
that's-
yeah, I
this
just,
is
because
longer
of the last
term.
thing you said, I captured it before I forgot.
Okay.
I have 2 or 3 other questions, like
Sure,
from
go ahead,
earlier on.
Councilor
You mentioned earlier about being able to go from 17 down to 10 to 13. I'm just trying to go back to that slide here. Oh, it's up here. Okay, and yet you said it's 10 is what you need to respond to a fire.
Yes.
So it makes me uneasy to think that if we only had 10 on instead of 17, all 10 are gone.
Right, and that's the point when we would use overtime as required.
Okay.
We'd have a callback, because most other departments have what they call a code yellow.
Gotcha.
So that the minute that happens, you already have a preset
Okay.
list of who
Okay.
you call back.
Yeah, and you call them out regardless because you've been
Because
vacated.
your
Yeah.
resources are now exhausted.
Yeah,
They come on, they're aware they're gonna come on,
yeah,
and then once everything is settled down, so instead of bringing
Okay.
somebody in for 12 hours, you're bringing them for 4 or 5
sure,
hours.
sure, so that's certainly a cost management for sure. Okay, and then the next line, this was about the communication room. Where is that? Is that up at the new facility?
No, that's it. Station number 1, it's a tiny little.
Okay, I wondered, because I
And it
thought,
looks
how
like
could
a
it be so
taxi
bad?
stand, unfortunately.
When that place is only about 4 years, 5, what, how old is it now? Garden Road, Old Garden Road.
When did that come in? That was,
6 years?
6 years ago.
The rest, yeah.
6 years.
About 6? I can't remember. It's been too long for me, so it all meshes together. Okay, so the savings of 300,000 is only because if we went ahead and did the refresh, right?
No, what we do right now, we have 4 junior firefighters who sit in there all day for 7 calls. So
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day, so it's a waste of resources.
Right.
And again, that's not the major concern is, this needs a major refresh.
Yeah, that's the
You walk in
350.
there and when I first walked in there, it was a thing that threw me off the most is, you can't be serious about this. I mean, there's a huge risk there.
Yeah, no ventilation, no, I'm sure.
There's no computer dispatch, it's still all done manually. Sooner or later, things fall
Yeah.
through the cracks when you rely on a manual system.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and the central ambulance, the CAC's up at the Old Gardner Road, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's a pretty state-of-the-art facility, isn't it?
Yeah, the beauty of that, they're state-of-the-art, they cover all the capital,
Yeah.
their dispatchers are highly trained, they have to be certified every year.
Yep, I remember going to their opening.
And
Okay.
the other thing too is they're on the North Shore here, from Elliott Lake through to Laird. They're dispatching all the other fire departments in the area. So they have lots of experience, they have lots of resources.
Yeah. Great. No, that's it for now. Thank you very much, Chief.
Councilor Christian?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mike, just to be clear, the law requires that there's 10 firefighters
No,
on fire?
there's a guideline, the Ontario, there are no regulations that say you must do this, you must do that, other than ironically just for trucks. When you buy a truck, you need to follow a certain standard for a truck.
Right.
We're moving to a training program for firefighters, but as far as actual staffing, there is no regulatory standard. There is a guideline which says 10 on the fire gun.
Do we normally send 10 out for a fire?
Yes.
Do we send 12 out for a fire?
Rarely. What I'm seeing is happening is we have a fire, so we send 10 to the fire, and the 4 or 6 that should be waiting back have to get
Show
to
up.
the fire.
Yeah.
That's called freelance. You can't be doing that.
Okay. You said that, I think one slide showed fire, there was 2,500 calls. And then you said they fight about 1 per week, so the numbers aren't, maybe I just misunderstood the slide.
The 2,515
Yeah, the 2,500,
1,000 were medical.
1,000 are medical.
Of the 2,500.
Yeah, so it's
Oh,
really
And those
50.
1,500 calls involve car accidents, chemical spills, and fire. There's only about 52, 53 fires a year.
Pure fires,
Pure
okay.
fire. Actual, we have to take hose off a truck and fight a fire.
So you said over 10 years, CapEx would be reduced by 2.3 million. That's, can you give me a quick breakdown on?
Yeah, that's from replacing, not replacing boats, not replacing the 2 big trucks that will have come up for renewal in 3 years. They're $1 million a crack almost themselves.
We just bought one of those trucks.
You said there's 4 platoons?
Yes.
2 public education officers. You're suggesting that we have 2 public education officers. Is it, do you hire those separately? Are those firefighters? Is that your proposal?
They're basically fire prevention officers who have extra training in education.
So they would come from the current complement of,
If they have the qualifications.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we keep track of how many fires each officer fights? Is there like a log that says, you know, Joe's fought 15, he gets a badge or something?
No.
It's not.
So that's not tracked because...
No, we're gonna start tracking it, because part of that, what I've said to the guys, and unfortunately, they are all guides, is when you drive for a month about, or you do go to certain fires, you need to notate that. Although it's not training, it's showing that you're doing your stuff.
Yeah.
And we don't have any of that. That's part of the whole training officer problem, that we don't document very much.
How much are we spending on overtime right now? Do we have a number?
Our budget is about $150,000 a year.
Do we have any idea what our overtime will look like if we put a model like this into place? I would suspect.
It'll almost go to zero,
You think it'll be lower?
way lower, because you'll have the opportunity to be flexible when required. So right now, through past practices, they've always have 17 on shift.
Right.
So if 4 are off on vacation, which they're allowed to have,
Right.
and then 1 or 2 other are sick, then I've got to backfill, and under this model, if I had 4 off already, and 2 booked off, depending on the time of day and the season and all those things, we'll have a matrix. I wouldn't have to necessarily replace them for the whole shift. I could maybe bring them in for 5 hours.
This backup complement, are they required to respond? Like, if they're on that list, they're required to come out? Is it like an on-call kind of thing? Where I'm going is if we went from 17 to 10 and we have 2 major fires and the guys say, screw you, Mike, I'm not coming out. You want to cut us? Go find somebody else.
No, is that possible? It's not probable. I mean, when they get called in because there's some action on and there's a chance to obviously make overtime, most
They
of the time.
want to do it, yeah.
Okay, well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think that's it for now.
Thank you. Councilor Bruni.
Thank you. Mike, is there another model that would be close to the model that you want our fire services to go to?
Is there another model?
Like, is there another community
Where they're doing it?
that is doing this?
They're doing this in, obviously, I mean, in my previous stint in North Bay, they're doing it in Belleville, they're doing it in Cornwall. It's starting to get momentum based on, historically, fire's always said we need, in our case, we need 17 firefighters on 24/7. Police and ambulance have years ago said we need to adjust our staffing for when the need is. So for example, while I have to maintain 17 on